Episode number 56. So the doorkeeper cheated the man, said Kay immediately, who had been captivated by the story. Don't be too quick, said the priest. Don't take somebody else's opinion without checking it. I told you the story exactly as it was written. There's nothing in there about cheating. But it's quite clear, said Kay, and your first interpretation of it was quite correct. The doorkeeper gave him the information that would release him only when it could be of no more use. He didn't ask him before that, said the priest, and don't forget he was only a doorkeeper, and as doorkeeper he did his due. What makes you think he did his due? Asked Kay. He didn't. It might have been his due to keep everyone else away, but this man is who the door was intended for, and he ought to have let him in. You're not paying enough attention to what was written, and you're changing the story, said the priest. According to the story, there are two important things that the doorkeeper explains about access to the law, one at the beginning, one at the end. At one place he says he can't allow him in now, and at the other he says this entrance was intended for him alone. If one of the statements contradicted the other you would be right, and the doorkeeper would have cheated the man from the country. But there is no contradiction. On the contrary, the first statement even hints at the second. You could almost say the doorkeeper went beyond his due in that he offered the man some prospect of being admitted in the future. Throughout the story, his due seems to have been merely to turn the man away, and there are many commentators who are surprised that the doorkeeper offered this hint at all, as he seems to love exactitude and keeps strict guard over his position. He stays at his post for many years, and doesn't close the gate until the very end. He's very conscious of the importance of his service, as he says, I'm powerful. He has respect for his superiors, as he says, I'm only the lowliest of the doormen. He's not talkative, as through all these years the only questions he asks are disinterested. He's not corruptible, as when he's offered a gift he says, I'll only accept this so that you don't think there's anything you've failed to do. As far as fulfilling his due goes he can be neither ruffled nor begged, as it says about the man that he tires the doorkeeper with his requests. Even his external appearance suggests a pedantic character, the big hooked nose, and the long, thin, black tartar beard. How could a doorkeeper be more faithful to his due? But in the doorkeeper's character there are also other features, which might be very useful for those who seek entry to the law. And when he hinted at some possibility in the future it always seemed to make it clear that he might even go beyond his due. There's no denying he's a little simple-minded, and that makes him a little conceited. Even if all he said about his power and the power of the other doorkeepers, and how not even he could bear the sight of them, I say even if all these assertions are right, the way he makes them shows that he's too simple and arrogant to understand properly. The commentators say about this that correct understanding of the matter, and a misunderstanding of the same matter are not mutually exclusive. Whether they're right or not, you have to concede that his simplicity and arrogance, however little they show, do weaken his function of guarding the entrance. There are defects in the doorkeeper's character. You also have to consider that the doorkeeper seems to friendly by nature. He isn't always just an official. He makes a joke right at the beginning, in that he invites the man to enter at the same time as maintaining the ban on his entering, and then he doesn't send him away, but gives him, as it says in the text, a stool to sit on, and lets him stay by the side of the door. The patience with which he puts up with the man's requests through all these years, the little questioning sessions, accepting the gifts, his politeness when he puts up with the man cursing his fate even though it was the doorkeeper who caused that fate, all these things seem to want to arouse our sympathy. Not every doorkeeper would have behaved in the same way. And finally, he lets the man back on him, and he bends deep down to him so that he can put his last question. There's no more than some slight impatience. The doorkeeper knows everything's come to its end, shown in the words, you're insatiable. There are many commentators who go even further in explaining it in this way, and think the words, you're insatiable, are an expression of friendly admiration, albeit with some condescension. However you look at it, the figure of the doorkeeper comes out differently from how you might think. You know the story better than I do, and you've known it for longer," said Kay. They were silent for a while. And then Kay said, "So you think the man was not cheated, do you?" "Don't get me wrong," said the priest. "I'm just pointing out the different opinions about it. You shouldn't pay too much attention to people's opinions. The text cannot be altered, and the various opinions are often no more than an expression of despair over it. There's even one opinion, which says it's the doorkeeper who's been cheated." "That does seem to take things too far," said Kay. "How can they argue the doorkeeper has been cheated?" "Their argument," answered the priest, "is based on the simplicity of the doorkeeper. They say the doorkeeper doesn't know the inside of the law, only the way into it, where he just walks up and down. They see his ideas of what's inside the law as rather childish, and suppose he's afraid himself of what he wants to make the man frightened of. Yes, he's more afraid of it than the man, as the man wants nothing but to go inside the law, even after he's heard about the terrible doorman there, in contrast to the doorkeeper, who doesn't want to go in, or at least we don't hear anything about it. On the other hand, there are those who say he must have already been inside the law as he has been taken on into its service, and that could only have been done inside. That can be countered by supposing he could have been given the job of doorkeeper by somebody calling out from inside, and that he can't have gone very far inside as he couldn't bear the sight of the third doorkeeper. Nor, through all those years, does the story say the doorkeeper told the man anything about the inside, other than his comment about the other doorkeepers. He could have been forbidden to do so, but he hasn't said anything about that either. All this seems to show he doesn't know anything about what the inside looks like, or what it means, and that's why he's being deceived. But he's also being deceived by the man from the country, as he's this man's subordinate, and doesn't know it. There's a lot to indicate that he treats the man as his subordinate, I expect you remember, but those who hold this view would say it's very clear that he really is his subordinate. Above all, the free man is superior to the man who has to serve another. Now, the man really is free, he can go wherever he wants, the only thing forbidden to him is entry into the law, and, what's more, there's only one man forbidding him to do so, the doorkeeper. If he takes the stool, and sits down beside the door, and stays there all his life, he does this of his own free will. There's nothing in the story to say he was forced to do it. On the other hand, the doorkeeper is kept to his post by his employment. He's not allowed to go away from it, and it seems he's not allowed to go inside either, not even if he wanted to. Also, although he's in the service of the law, he's only there for this one entrance, therefore he's there only in the service of this one man who the door's intended for. This is another way in which he's his subordinate. We can take it that he's been performing this somewhat empty service for many years, through the whole of a man's life, as it says that a man will come. That means someone old enough to be a man. That means the doorkeeper will have to wait a long time before his function is fulfilled. He will have to wait for as long as the man liked, who came to the door of his own free will. Even the end of the doorkeeper's service is determined by when the man's life ends, so the doorkeeper remains his subordinate right to the end. And it's pointed out repeatedly that the doorkeeper seems to know nothing of any of this, although this is not seen as anything remarkable, as those who hold this view see the doorkeeper as deluded in a way that's far worse, a way that's to do with his service. At the end, speaking about the entrance, he says, "Now I'll go and close it," although at the beginning of the story it says the door to the law is open as it always is, but if it's always open, always, that means it's open independently of the lifespan of the man it's intended for, and not even the doorkeeper will be able to close it. There are various opinions about this. Some say the doorkeeper was only answering a question, or showing his devotion to duty, or, just when the man was in his last moments, the doorkeeper wanted to cause him regret and sorrow. There are men who agree that he wouldn't be able to close the door. They even believe, at the end at least, the doorkeeper is aware, deep down, that he's the man's subordinate, as the man sees the light that shines out of the entrance to the law, whereas the doorkeeper would probably have his back to it, and says nothing at all to show there's been a change. "That is well substantiated," said Kay. who had been repeating some parts of the priest's explanation to himself in a whisper. It is well substantiated, and now I too think the doorkeeper must have been deceived. Although that does not mean I've abandoned what I thought earlier, as the two versions are, to some extent, not incompatible. It's not clear whether the doorkeeper sees clearly, or is deceived. I said the man had been cheated. If the doorkeeper understands clearly, then there could be some doubt about it, but if the doorkeeper has been deceived, then the man is bound to believe the same thing. That would mean the doorkeeper is not a cheat, but so simple-minded that he ought to be dismissed from his job immediately. If the doorkeeper is mistaken, it will do him no harm, but the man will be harmed immensely. "There you've found another opinion," said the priest, "as there are men who say the story doesn't give anyone the right to judge the doorkeeper. However, he might seem to, as he is still in the service of the law, so he belongs to the law, so he's beyond what man has a right to judge. In this case we can't believe the doorkeeper is the man's subordinate. Even if he has to stay at the entrance into the law, his service makes him incomparably more than if he lived freely in the world. The man has come to the law for the first time, and the doorkeeper is already there. He's been given his position by the law. To doubt his worth would be to doubt the law." "I can't say I'm in complete agreement with this view," said Kay, shaking his head. "As, if you accept it, you'll have to accept that everything said by the doorkeeper is true. But you've already explained very fully that that's not possible." "No," said the priest. "You don't need to accept everything as true, you only have to accept it as necessary." "Depressing view," said Kay. "The lie made into the rule of the world.